Are you guys hearing me? Okay. Globalization, don't back for one sound. Let's just discuss what is word sound and what is word north. And then we'll discuss what is globalization and how you define globalization. Because if you dig into the literature of globalization and word south and word north, you will see a huge amount of literature that says that there is no particular definition of globalization. Some says globalization in terms of economic development, some says globalization in terms of political development, and some says globalization in terms of economic and political and social development. So let's just discuss one example as a definition of globalization. That is, globalization is an activity that instigates economic activity that is good for the economic and overall and social well-being of the society. So, and now world north and world south. If you look back in the literature, like 100 years back, you will see that the world south is the name, is the convention that was given to the developing countries, and world north was the convention that was given to the developed countries. Now, why did it happen? Like, as we see the case of Australia. Australia is in world south, but now it is considered as world north. Same with Singapore, Korea, and China. They are in world south, but they are considered as a world north. So it is just a naming convention that undeveloped and developed. World now and world south. So again, if you see there is an ambiguity in the literature, like the authors are not very clear about world north, world south, and the definition of globalization. So you have to pick what is world north, what is world south to make a reference point. So as we pick globalization as an activity for overall economic well-being and social development for the society, and world south is the underdeveloped world. Now, if you see the experience of Korea, you will see that globalization is a very good experience. But if you see the experience of Pakistan, the country from where I am, the globalization was not a good factor for us. And if you see the example of India and other countries in the south, and if you see the example of Australia, globalization was very good for them. So, if you see on these arguments, like you can't say a single line that globalization is good or globalization is bad. You have to dig like what were the factors that were good for Australia, that were good for China, that were good for Korea, and what were the factors that were not there in the globalization experience of Pakistan, in the globalization experience of India and Sri Lanka as well, and Bangladesh. So when I was doing this essay, I identified 4 factors that has to be there, and I named them as 3 globalization factors. And if you have those 3 globalization factors, your globalization experience will be good. And if you don't have those 3 globalization factors, your globalization experience will be a best. So the argument of that country has to be mature enough to face the globalization experience and to absorb the globalization experience in order to come out of that globalization experience as a successful, developed country in the world. So the first factor was the political stability. Like, the political stability is the one thing that has to be in the entire system. Because politics and government makes the policies and all of the stuff, like where do the resources will go, where do the finance will go, and where do all of the development budget will go. Look, as the case in our country, like in the past 20 years, we have like 8 regimes. And in 8 regimes, there was inconsistency between the policies. Like the first government came, they started different projects. The second government came, they halted their projects and put the money in the different projects.
2 more minutes.
Now, so as you see, like stability. There has to be a political stability in order to cope up with the globalization experience. The next thing is financial institutions. Financial institutions must be developed, and there has to be a financial infrastructure in order to manage the flow of capital and flow of money from the developed world. Third thing, human resource. Your human resource has to be well connected and well trained in order to follow the policies and all the machinery that globalization brings to your country in order to cope up with the experience. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Wow.
Does somebody have anything to add to that, or an alternative view to offer on this question? Is this the only
Prompt to speech.
We can choose, for example, political issue, the effect of globalization, political situation, and all one of aspects, or social, and to concentrate on it.
So this would be another way. So these are two ways of answering that question that are slightly different, but both would be acceptable in terms of answering the question. You make an argument, you argue your argument, you draw on the literature. One of the things that I haven't asked you yet is what authors would you be drawing on in terms of this globalization debate? You made a reference to the literature in general, but could you, or you or anybody else, give me some names of some authors that you might be drawing on for this literature?
I don't remember the name right now.
So one of the things to do in preparation for the exam is to go back to the reading pack and to the course outline and have a look at the readings that we did on the course. And in terms of preparation for the exam, remember to memorize the main points of the authors and the names of the authors, so that when you're explaining your argument, you can contextualize your argument and you can draw on the literature that we studied on the course. And that is obviously something that is important. I'm going to take one more question, and then
we must put references.
You don't need to put references, full references, but it would be good to know some of the main authors that we studied on the course. You don't need to cite chapter and verse in the examination, but you should show that you have knowledge of the literature that we studied on the course. You do not need a bibliography, but I'll run through the technicalities in a moment. I'm going to take one more question on what you've been talking about and how to answer these questions in the exam. What other questions? The Carmen. Go ahead. Don't tell me, tell everyone else. So the question was, what are the differences between autonomous and we got the lecture slide. Fantastic. Thank you very much.
It's recorded
So let's have a look at that.
Yeah. They're recording it and put it in Slack. Oh really? Yeah. Everything? Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that.
Who wrote the question down?
Okay. I can turn it over now.
Tell us the question.